People often say the sky is never silent, but if one day it truly holds its breath, that is not peace. That is when fate is choosing who will answer. SilverAir Flight 982 left Seattle on a cold night in early January. In the pitch-black sky of the American Pacific Northwest, the city lights narrowed into a fragile streak and then vanished. All the passengers were exhausted, except for a man in row 19. Eli Navarro, 36 years old, lean build, cropped hair, hands calloused from years accustomed to wrenches and the smell of machine oil. The cabin light fell across his face, weary, yet strangely calm. Beside him was a small girl, dozing off on her father's shoulder, with an oxygen monitor blinking in steady rhythm. Green, green, red, like the heart of the sky trying to keep its beat. He bent down slightly, drawing a circle with his finger on the misted window. Outside, the clouds curled like ocean waves. The little girl cracked an eye open and asked in a sleepy voice, "Dad, if the sky is quiet, will anyone hear me pray?" Eli smiled, but didn't answer right away. He looked at his daughter for a long time, as if wanting to memorize each fragile breath. Then he replied softly, "Yes, but not to listen, to see who dares to answer it." 3 rows ahead, a woman in a deep blue suit sat up straight, her hands gripping the edge of the seat. Her name was Dr. Claire Beaumont, CEO of the energy tech conglomerate Helios Dynamics, once praised as the golden brain of next-generation aviation. She had once made the world lift its gaze to the stars. Now she only wanted to bow her head and avoid every glance. On the tablet screen in the seat pocket before her, a dim warning line flickered. Helios 9, pulse transmission interference. She glanced at it, then hurriedly powered the device off. She knew what it meant. She just hadn't expected that an interference error from her own Helios satellite would soon make this plane the morning news. A slight shudder. No one noticed. The cup of water on the tray of seat 18B quivered faintly. A baby cried softly and then fell silent. Eli opened his eyes, set his hand lightly to the floor, listening like a mechanic accustomed to an engine's groan. That sound wasn't normal. It wasn't turbulence. It was the metal's breath faltering. He lifted his head. Through the window, the light outside changed color, from blue to white, from white to red. Then, it went out. The entire passenger cabin sank into thick darkness. No engine noise. No lights. No sound remained except human heartbeats and the faint beeping from Sophie's oxygen monitor. Claire gripped the armrest, unlocked her phone, but the screen showed only one error line. No signal. System failure. Eli looked around, his eyes adjusting to the dark. Beside him, the little girl whispered, trembling, "Dad, the sky is so quiet." Eli placed a hand on his daughter's chest, his voice low and steady. "Because it's listening, sweetheart." He looked up, and in that instant, his eyes reflected what the sky had lost, the faith of a man who once flew. A soft boom sounded beneath the cabin floor. The emergency lights flashed for a heartbeat, just enough to throw light on Claire's face. She looked toward row 19, and in the flicker she saw the man with his eyes closed, as if listening to something no one else could hear anymore. Somewhere above the cloud layer over Wyoming, the sky held its breath. The plane drifted without sound, without guidance, without engines. And fate began to count down. Screen darkens, wind howls, Sophie's heartbeat merges with the engine's dying wheeze. SilverAir 982 slid smoothly over a layer of cold cloud like the night's own arm. The engine noise returned, steady, gentle enough to make people believe it had never disappeared. In the cabin, the air warmed. Passengers settled back into their seats, forced smiles, cups of coffee steaming. Only Eli hadn't fully sat down. He bent over, checked Sophie's breathing tube, adjusted the small silver clip on his daughter's wrist as if it were a compass keeping him on course. The little girl opened her eyes, drowsy voice. "Dad, are we flying high?" Eli smiled, brushed a few strands of hair off her forehead. "High enough to make everything look small, sweetheart." When things get small, that's when you see what truly matters. Sophie nodded, then drifted off again, lips curling into a half-dreaming smile. In the row ahead, Claire Beaumont quietly unbuttoned her blazer, hiding the Helios logo on the nameplate still half showing. She took a small sip of water, listening to her heartbeat like an offbeat clock. Under the dim amber lights, Claire looked around. Strangers sleeping, trusting unconditionally in engineering, in metal, in the sky. She envied them. She had once made the sky trust her, until a margin of error in the Helios 9 satellite system skewed a slew of aviation signals. The accident hadn't gone public yet, but she knew. Give it one more night and everything would explode. Eli sat still, his eyes on the window where the aurora cast a pale green veil. His hands trembled slightly, not from cold, but from memory. He had once been in the cockpit, where every switch was a heartbeat, where courage was measured in silence. Now he was just a mechanic, living by fixing trucks, working night shifts, counting the breaths of a fragile child. The world had forgotten he once flew. But he had never stopped hearing the wind. A flight attendant walked by, smile tired but still polite. "Can I get you anything else, sir?" Eli shook his head. "Just a little water for the kid, thanks." When she left, Claire glanced at the man behind her. He didn't look like a regular passenger. The way he observed everything, the floor's vibration, the flicker of the overhead lights, or each time the plane banked slightly, was like a pilot used to reading the wind by ear. She wondered, how could someone like that be sitting in the cheapest row with a little girl breathing through assisted oxygen? Soft giggles from a child somewhere down the aisle eased the space. Sophie opened her eyes too, pointed at the window. "Dad, look, a falling star!" Eli leaned in, following the tiny finger. A long streak as thin as a silver thread slid across the sky. "Not a star," he murmured. "That's another airplane. But you can call it a star if you like. Sometimes people need to believe that everything falling is for making wishes." Claire heard him and glanced up. For a moment their eyes met. Just a flicker, but enough for her to see in his gaze something she had lost. Trust that didn't rely on technology. A faint tremor tipped the coffee cup on Claire's tray. A hot droplet flicked onto her wrist, making her start. She looked around. The engine's rhythm was slightly off. Very faint, but enough to make someone who'd overseen thousands of flights feel her chest tighten. Eli sensed it too. He lowered his voice as if speaking to himself. "This isn't good." Claire turned, frowning. "What did you say?" "I said, it's fine." Eli answered quickly, but his eyes didn't leave the dim red strip of warning lights on the ceiling. The air in the cabin changed abruptly. The hiss of wind outside grew clearer, harsher. Claire felt her chest constrict. She turned to her tablet. The screen was dead black, reflecting only herself. A tired, guilty shadow. She powered it down, leaned back, tried to breathe slowly. But just a few rows behind, Eli already knew. The plane was in trouble. He could hear metal breaking in the frame. A load-bearing spar was vibrating at the wrong frequency. Sophie suddenly coughed hard. The breathing tube slipped from her wrist. Eli hurried to hold it, readjusting the tiny valve notch. Claire saw it, quickly took off her scarf and handed it to him. "Use this to secure it for now." Eli paused a beat, then took it, eyes briefly surprised. "Thank you. Don't mention it." Her voice was husky, slightly shaking. A bead of sweat slid down Claire's temple, though the cabin was still cold. A soft boom sounded somewhere beneath the floor. The entire aircraft shuddered like a wounded beast. Emergency lights began flashing. A few passengers screamed. Eli stood, gripping the seat back in front. "Hold the child tight," he said quickly to Claire, forgetting the borderlines of seat rows. "This jolt isn't air turbulence." Claire grabbed Sophie's hand, held on. "Who are you?" she asked. Eli didn't answer. He cocked his head, listening to the engines. Then, as if confirming an old fear, he closed his eyes. The captain's voice rasped through the speaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a minor electrical issue. Please remain calm." The sound crackled, then cut off. In the cabin, only sobs and heavy breathing remained. Eli bent down, whispered into his daughter's ear. "Sophie, listen to me. Close your eyes." Whatever happens, breathe like you're listening to your favorite song, okay? The little girl nodded weakly. Claire watched the two of them, her chest tightening. A father, no power, no title, yet calmer than everyone. When the flickering lights died completely, a flash of lightning outside lit Eli's face for an instant. Claire froze. What she saw in his eyes wasn't fear. It was a return, as if the soul of a former pilot had awoken after 10 years of sleep. The plane banked left, frame booming with impact. Oxygen masks dropped in a rush from the ceiling. Claire grabbed one, pulled it down for Sophie. Eli clenched the seat, lifted his gaze along the chaotic cabin, and knew the only thing he could do was stand up. A flight attendant's shout cut through. "Is there anyone from aviation?" "Pilot, technician." No one answered. A stretched silence fell. Then, amid the metal's groan, Eli placed Sophie into Claire's arms and murmured, "Hold her. Whatever happens, don't let go." Claire stared. "Where are you going?" "The sky is calling my name," he said softly, and strode toward the cockpit. The door closed behind him. And in the passenger cabin, only gasping breaths remained, the oxygen monitor blinking red, and a question hanging in the dim emergency light. Who is really flying this plane? Top of form, the moment the cockpit door clicked shut, the world split in two. Outside, chaos, sobs, prayers, the groan of tortured metal. Inside, a viscous emptiness, where every breath could hear the heartbeat of the man who had just stepped in. Eli drew in a deep breath. The stench of burnt plastic and scorched wiring stung his nose. Dim red warning lights washed over the console, pulsing like a failing heart. Captain Rodriguez slumped in the left seat, face ashen, sweat beading. His harness cinched across his chest like a rope strung between life and death. In the right seat, the first officer lay limp, eyes shut, the oxygen mask dangling from its strap and swaying in the stale air. "No. I'm not losing anyone else." Eli moved fast, unbuckled Rodriguez, hauled him back, and propped him against the bulkhead. A pulse hit the base of Eli's throat, weak but there. He turned to the panel. Nearly everything was dead. The altimeter needle kept sinking. Fuel gauges, black. Radar display, a blind night. Only a faint glow from the standbys pulsed a pale green. Eli set his palm on the yoke. Familiarity ran up his spine, like touching an old soul. Part of him wanted to shake. Another part, the one that had flown a C-130 through Kandahar's sandstorms, stood up inside him on its own. "It's okay. You can still do this," he whispered, to himself, or to the machine gasping under his hands. The door nudged open behind him. A flight attendant, eyes rimmed with tears, appeared. "Sir, who are you?" Her voice trembled, yet the training not to panic kept a thread of courtesy intact. "Used to be a pilot," Eli said, eyes never leaving the panel. "Not anymore. How long can you stay calm?" he asked, still gripping the yoke. She blinked. I'll try. Then listen. Both pilots are down. I need a line to the ground. If not, I'm putting her down by hand. You know how?" "No. I used to teach people how." He eased the yoke, tuning the wing's bite, feeling the airframe shudder in an uglier register. "Get them strapped in, row by row. Talk to them." "I'll talk to the sky." Something in his voice made her believe, as if he belonged in that seat. She nodded. "Good luck." "Don't need luck," he said dryly. "Just trust." The door sealed. Outside, Claire held her breath. She lifted her head at every metallic groan, then bowed it again, cradling Sophie. The little girl dozed fitfully, face white. The oximeter winked red. Claire steadied it, cinched it down with her own scarf. "Will Daddy come back?" Sophie murmured, eyes shut. "He will," Claire said, voice quivering but gentle. "He's doing what no one else can, Daddy." "Used to be a pilot," the girl breathed. "But I think he still is." The words stilled Claire. "Still is." A child, frail and clear, believing what adults had forgotten. If you've flown once, you never truly fall. In the cockpit, Eli tried the radio again. Static. He rolled frequencies. Voice rough. "SilverAir 982 to Denver Control. Mayday. Dual engine failure. Both pilots incapacitated. I'm holding best glide. Please acknowledge." A long empty beat. Then a woman's voice cracked through, fractured by noise. "SilverAir 982. Copy weak. Repeat your name." He swallowed. "Eli Navarro." The carrier wavered, then steadied. Military timbre, familiar. "Eli Navarro. Air National Guard, correct?" He froze. Out 10 years. This is Commander Sarah Lynn, 139th Airlift Wing. I know that voice. You still remember how to fly? A thin smile touched Eli's mouth. No choices left, Sarah. My daughter's on this plane. Silence, then her tone softened. All right, Eli, talk to me. Altitude? 32,000 and dropping fast. Both engines gone. Main bus is dead. I'm on raw hands. Hold 7 degrees of glide. Don't bleed speed. Too slow and you drop like a brick. Copy. He trimmed, knuckles taut, sweat tracking his neck. Any chance to bring the backups online? Sarah asked. Eli thumbed a few guarded switches. A spit of sparks. Lights fluttered, died. Negative. EMP burned the board. This ship's a ghost. Then it's wings and faith, she said, voice going low. I'll vector you visual. Winds northwest, light. You're over Wyoming. Aim for Denver. If you can't make it, divert Casper or Cheyenne. How far to Casper? About 60 miles, Eli huffed a laugh. Then I'll stretch every inch of sky. In the cabin, the wind's scream grew teeth. Claire felt the pressure clamp her rib cage. The jet slid on a line that wasn't normal. Someone shouted, "We're falling, aren't we?" Claire turned, steady for the first time. No, someone's holding us up. The sentence tugged belief back on its leash. She breathed, looked out. The clouds thinned, revealing a slab of violet sky. Somewhere in that open, she knew, the man from row 19 sat where he'd always belonged. Eli cracked the PA. His voice rolled out, warm. Horse, carrying weight. Passengers of SilverAir 982. This is Eli Navarro. I'm flying the airplane. We've lost both engines, but not hope. I know fear is here, in every breath. But listen to me. The sky still has room for people who want to live. He paused, heard the sobbing lift and settle. Then, belts tight. Stay seated. Breathe with me. We're going down, not on engines, but on trust. At 19C, Claire's eyes overflowed. It wasn't a pilot speaking, but a father talking to the world with his heart. Is that my dad? Sophie whispered. Yes, Claire smiled. He's talking to the sky. And the sky is listening. A passenger laced their fingers together. Then another. Then the whole cabin. No loud prayers, just breathing, and the strange hush of an orchestra holding the last note. Sarah came back on Frick. Eli, wind data inbound. Altitude now? Dropping 28,000. Good. Keep it smooth. Don't fight gravity. Let it pull, then point it. You remember the line? Eli's laugh rasped. Good pilots fly by skill. Survivors fly by instinct. Exactly. Now tune to the wind. It's your data, he obeyed. Eyes half closed, ears open, fingertips reading the fuselage. The hiss sharpened, softened, sharpened. He eased a bank. The tremor eased with it. Okay, he breathed. You still there, Sarah? Always. Like Kandahar, 10 years ago. Memory burst. Darkness. A transport on fire. Eli hauling the yoke through a sea of flame. He lived. 3 didn't. He left the sky that night unworthy by his own verdict. Eli? I'm here. Don't fly to outrun fear. Fly to reach the one waiting in row 19. His jaw set. Copy, thanks. Time congealed. Red lights, the lash of air. Claire laid her palm to the window, watching the Earth's faint grid glow through the dark. Every point a whispered plea. She saw the Helios Tower in her mind. Glass, meetings, numbers, promises of a safer future. She had believed until Helios 9, pulse transmission failure, bloomed across a screen. An EMP burp from her satellites had blacked out dozens of birds. Now it had stolen her sky. She tightened her hold on Sophie. If we live, I'll tell the truth, all of it. What's truth? The girl breathed. Not running anymore. In the cockpit, 24,000 feet. Sarah. You have the Rockies, off your right. I see them, Whitecap. If we drift, we die on them. Hold 147. 15 minutes and you're in the safe. 15 minutes, Eli repeated, in a dead ship. A thin smile. Sounds more like a miracle than math. Then fly like you believe in miracles. Seconds thickened. Each shiver a test. Each breath a recount of hope. The jet felt lighter. He knew he'd found the good air. Sarah, I have lights ahead. Keep that line. That's Denver. Air slipped from his lungs, lighter. The cabin gentled. No more screaming. Only hands, whispers. Sophie slept evenly now, a smile perched in her dream. Claire murmured, to no one but herself. No one guessed the man in row 19 was the one in the sky. Eli touched Sophie's photo. Hear me, kiddo? Your dad still remembers how to land. Sarah, Eli, you're doing what the rest wouldn't dare. We've got you painted at center. The whole control room's watching. They're calling you the mechanic. He almost laughed, eyes bright. A mechanic can fix a sky. No, Eli, Sarah said. You're not fixing it. You're making it trust us again. Then, as if answered, the aux bus flickered. Lamps came up, weak but living. A soft chime, a slice of radar. Eli exhaled, almost a prayer. Oh, God. She's waking up. Good, Sarah snapped. Now you've got true altitude, he scanned. 20,000. We've really got a shot. 2 hands on the yoke. All right, old girl. We're not done. At row 19, Claire smiled without knowing why. The ship felt lighter, truer. Sophie stirred. The sky's smiling, she mumbled. Probably because your dad just talked it into it, Claire whispered back. Forward, the sky opened. The cloud banks parted like arms. The world held its breath. He heard his pulse, the wind in the bones, Sarah's voice barely above a whisper. Go, Eli, and remember not everyone gets to save the sky twice. He shut his eyes. Thanks for not forgetting me. No, Sarah answered. This time the sky remembered your name. At 20,000 feet between black air and electric storm, a man who'd lost his faith began hauling 137 lives home. No music, no halo, only breath, sweat, and a promise he'd once made to his daughter. I'll always bring you home. And this time, that promise was flying. In the cockpit, the wind screamed like a violin string stretched to breaking. Outside, the sky was pure black. No stars, no moon, only endless space, blind and cold. Eli Navarro sat in that darkness, hands locked tight around the control column. He could feel the pulse in his wrist hammering, trying to wake the memory of every takeoff he'd ever lived through. Behind him, the 2 pilots were still motionless. The air stank of burning circuits, of sweat, of fear. Each time the altitude needle dropped, Eli could hear his own heartbeat stumble. Stay calm. Sarah Lynn's voice came through the headset, faint but steady. You're doing good, Eli. Now tell me, what's your speed? Eli glanced at the half-dead panel where only a few lights flickered weakly. 260 knots, decreasing. Good. Hold 5 degrees on the glide. Don't try to lift. If you fight gravity now, you'll lose control. Copy. Eli exhaled slowly. He knew she was right. In the sky, there are moments you can't fight the fall, only guide it, soften it, give it direction. In the cabin, Claire looked around. The red emergency lights coated every trembling face. Some people still clutched hands in prayer. A little boy sobbed for his mother. A young woman shook uncontrollably. No one knew how far they were, or how long they had left. Claire tightened her hold on Sophie, feeling the weak warmth of the child's breath against her neck. Daddy's going to land us, right? Sophie whispered, her voice trembling, her eyes oddly bright under the red glow. Claire pressed her lips together, hiding the fear in her own eyes. Of course. Your dad once flew through a war, remember? A man like that never lets the sky win. Only after saying it did she realize she needed to believe that more than the child did. Eli adjusted the yoke, fighting to keep the fuselage stable. The engines were silent now. Only the rush of air and the soft crackle of dying electricity remained. Sarah's voice kept coming, steady as a metronome, keeping him upright in the chaos. You're at 20,000 feet. Keep this up, and you've got 12 minutes before you hit the low clouds. I'm dispatching rescue to light the emergency strip at Casper. But Eli, if the wind shifts, you'll have to choose Casper or the mountain flats. Eli gave a tired chuckle. I've made the wrong choice plenty of times, Sarah. Not this one. Because of the girl in row 19, right? Yeah, she's the reason I still fly. Sarah paused, her voice softening. Then let her be the reason you land. He inhaled deeply, eyes lifting toward the void beyond the glass. Thick, black, like velvet draped over the world. But far ahead, where the dark met the earth's curve, a faint glimmer pulsed. City light. Denver. Too far. In the cabin, Claire rose as a few bulbs overhead flickered back to life. A ripple of voices spread. Power's back. The lights are on. Faces turned toward one another, hope rekindling like a candle in the dark. But Claire didn't feel relief. She secretly pulled out the tablet hidden in her jacket and switched it to emergency mode. A line flashed across the screen, red and merciless. Helios 9, Impulse detected. Origin, Wyoming sector. Her chest seized. Impossible. Her satellite, her design was the cause. She forced herself not to scream. In that instant, she saw every face relying on someone in the cockpit and realized her sin wasn't technical. It was betrayal of trust. She looked down at Sophie, sleeping now, lips murmuring some dream word. Claire placed her palm on the child's forehead and whispered, "I promise. If we live, I'll never let a mistake like this happen again." Inside the cockpit, Eli worked to harness the auxiliary power that had just returned. He flipped the second radio online. The signal came clearer. Sarah's voice warmed now. "You did it. Radar's got you again. We're all watching. Just keep her steady 10 more minutes." Eli gave a hoarse laugh. "Feels like the first decent thing I've done in 10 years. I'm serious, Eli. You're on the main board. The whole control tower's watching. Someone just called you the mechanic." He chuckled breathlessly. "A mechanic fixing the sky. That's a joke." "No, Eli," Sarah said. "You're making the sky trust people again." In the cabin, Claire gripped the armrest, tears slipping before she noticed. Eli's voice rolled through the speakers, steady, low, embracing everyone. "This is Eli Navarro. I know you're scared. So am I. But we still have each other, and we still have Earth below us. If anyone's praying, keep praying. And if you've never believed before, believe now." His voice was warm, deep, not a command, but an embrace that wrapped around the entire cabin. Claire whispered, "He's holding the whole sky together with his voice." An elderly passenger smiled faintly, eyes closed. No one screamed anymore. They only listened, to the wind, to Sophie's faint heart monitor, to the distant hum of courage from the cockpit. Eli tilted the yoke gently. The radar stuttered back to life, showing a curved streak, Wyoming's border. Below, he could see the vast black mass of the Rockies. "Sarah, if the wind turns, we'll never clear Casper. What's your plan?" "Divert southeast. I remember a valley near the Platte River. We can glide down there." Sarah shot back immediately. "No, Eli, terrain's uneven." "Sarah, I've got no choice." Silence stretched. "Then, all right, but trust yourself more than the map." Eli nodded, as if she could see him. He pulled lightly, adjusting the tilt, sweat running into his eyes. The altimeter dropped, 18,000. At 500, 17,000. Claire felt the plane tilt. Her ears rang. She held Sophie tight. "Hold your breath, little one," she whispered. The girl nodded faintly, her fingers gripping a pendant shaped like wings on Claire's neck, a gift from Helios once symbolizing faith in the sky. Now it was just cold metal. "Daddy," Sophie murmured, half asleep. "I can hear the sky's heart beating." Claire hugged her closer, tears breaking loose. "That's right, your dad's waking it up." In the cockpit, Eli gritted his teeth. The wind shifted, hard. A crosswind slammed from the left, the plane lurching sideways. The right wing shuddered violently. Warning lights flared red. He tightened his grip, counter-steering, sweat pouring down his face. "Sarah, I'm losing control." "Eli, listen to me. Don't fight it hard. Let the wind finish its work. Breathe, then pull back gently." He obeyed. A piercing screech then, the wings leveled, the frame steadied. He gasped, jaw clenched tight. Sarah's voice cracked through the radio. "That's it." "I've got you. You're back online." "Keep it. 8 minutes left." Eli nodded. "Sarah, if I don't make it, don't say that. You will. No, hear me. If I don't, tell Sophie her dad kept his promise. He always brings her home." Silence. Then Sarah whispered, "I promise." Time stretched thin, every second an hour. Claire felt the soft vibration of the metal, the wind outside easing, the light beyond the windows turning silver gray. Somewhere below, dawn was beginning. Sophie's eyes fluttered open, a faint smile. "It's morning," Claire nodded, choking up. "Yeah, I think your dad's seeing that light before we do." Eli looked out the window. Yes, the horizon was changing. The first light of day brushed the mountain peaks. He smiled, trembling. "We're almost home." Sarah's voice rose, urgent. "You're clearing the Rockies." "I see the descent." "There's open ground ahead." "Eli, you can land." "Copy." He eased the yoke, lowering altitude. The fuselage trembled violently. Lights in the cabin blinked. Everyone held their breath. Claire bent low, wrapping Sophie in her arms. "Hold on tight, little angel." In the cockpit, Eli watched the gauge. 10,000 feet. 8,000. 6,500. Sunlight poured through the windshield, blinding. He tilted his head, shielding his eyes, pulling back gently. "It's time," he whispered. "Fly by heart, Navarro," Sarah shouted through the radio. "Hold your line." 3,000 feet, Eli roared back. "There's no line, Sarah, only ground." The metal screamed. The aircraft convulsed. Claire cried out, clutching Sophie, eyes squeezed shut. The sky burst white, then went dark. The first impact hit, dry, brutal, final. Another, then a long, tearing screech. Everything went silent. One breath, two. Then, somewhere in the smoke, Eli's voice, hoarse but clear. "We've..." Touchdown. In the cabin, Claire opened her eyes. They were alive. Light leaked through the windows. Outside, the sun rose over patchy snow. No one believed it. A woman sobbed. A child clapped. Claire didn't cry. She just looked forward, toward the cockpit door, cracked open. And through the haze, she saw a man standing upright, one hand braced on the frame, smiling wearily. The sky behind him was turning gold. And in that first light, Eli Navarro was no longer the man from row 19. He was the one who pulled the sky back down, with faith and a promise. That morning, the Wyoming sky was impossibly clear. Not a single cloud, only a thin mist stretching across the valley. And in the middle of that vast emptiness lay a silver-gray aircraft, motionless and serene, like a great bird that had finally folded its wings. Its nose rested lightly against the earth, the skid marks trailing over 200 meters. And yet miraculously, not a fragment broken, not a fire, not a single scream of despair, only the wind and the quiet breaths of the living. Eli opened his eyes. The smell of smoke and scorched metal still hung thick. His neck throbbed, shoulders numb. But he could still hear the faintest sound. Sophie's small voice calling from the cabin. "Dad!" One word, then silence. He unlatched his seatbelt, forcing himself upright, head spinning but legs firm. He stepped out of the cockpit, pushing through the haze, and saw them, people trembling, alive, holding each other, crying, laughing, unable to believe they still existed. Claire was the first to stand, still holding Sophie in her arms, tears and laughter blending into one. When Eli appeared, she almost stopped breathing. He still wore the faded gray jacket, hair disheveled, a streak of dried blood across his forehead. But his eyes were calm, warm, and deep. Amid the chaos, he was the still point. "Is she okay?" Eli asked, voice hoarse but gentle. "She's breathing," Claire replied. "Thanks to you." Eli nodded, laid a hand softly on Sophie's forehead. "Good job, my little pilot." Sophie opened her eyes, lips pale but curling into a smile. "I knew you'd land us, Daddy." He smiled, choked with emotion, as if every year of struggle and guilt had dissolved in that single sentence. From a distance came the sound of rescue helicopters. The ground trembled softly. Claire looked up, rotor light flashing across her face, catching her tear-streaked eyes. For the first time in years, she felt something no billion-dollar project had ever given her. The humility of standing before real courage. When the rescue team arrived, no one asked who Eli was. They only saw a man standing amid an intact fuselage, jacket stained with oil, holding a child in his arms, smiling faintly. A young medic stammered, "Sir, are you the captain?" "How did you—" Eli just shook his head. "No, I'm just someone who couldn't stay seated." They didn't understand, but they didn't need to. News spread faster than the wind. Within 3 hours, all of America knew of the Wyoming miracle. A commercial airliner had lost both engines, fallen 32,000 feet, and still landed safely. 132 souls survived, and an unknown man had been at the controls. Claire sat inside a medical tent, wrapped in a silver blanket, watching Sophie sleep on a stretcher. Outside, reporters crowded like a forest of microphones. She pulled out her phone, opened her inbox. A message from Helios HQ read, "Cancel all statements. No comments. System failure under review. Do not mention the EMP." She let out a bitter laugh. "Don't mention the EMP?" While an entire plane had nearly become a graveyard. She tossed the phone aside and took a deep breath. Amid the chaos, she heard familiar, steady footsteps. Eli approached, carrying 2 cups of water. "You holding up?" "Fine. If that means still breathing, then you're fine." He sat beside her, his gaze landing on Sophie. "She looks just like her mother." Claire blinked, surprised. "No, I'm not her mother." Eli nodded gently. "But you held her like one." That moment between ambulance sirens and wind was quiet. Not heavy, but the kind of silence only two people who had seen death and still chosen life could share. By noon, the rescue camp had become the nation's center. Cameras, reporters, officials flooded in. An FAA agent approached Eli, a thick file in hand. "Mr. Navarro, we need to debrief you. Clarify how you piloted the aircraft without a license." "Debrief?" Claire cut in, voice sharp. "He just saved over 100 lives." "Exactly," the agent replied. "Which is why we need to know how." Eli looked down, smiled faintly. "I don't have a pretty answer." "I flew on faith," the man jotted a note. "Faith isn't part of aviation protocol, sir." "Then maybe it's time protocol learned it." That line, simple and raw, spread across every evening broadcast. The image of the gray-jacketed mechanic standing in the snow, answering with a tired smile, became a symbol. Headlines blazed, "The mechanic who landed the sky." Eli Navarro, the man who made gravity kneel. But Eli stayed silent. He sat by Sophie's hospital bed, hand in hers, unmoved by praise. He hated noise. He had once lost himself in applause as a military pilot. And he knew now, glory is the emptiest sound on earth. Days later, Claire came to visit. No blazer, no badge, just a woman with a bag of apples and an envelope. "You don't watch TV?" she asked, setting it on the table. "No need," Eli replied. "People have told me enough." "Then you must know you're the most famous man in America." He laughed. "And still making coffee by hand. Actually, there's something you should know." Her tone grew grave. "I work for Helios." Eli looked up, silent. The small room seemed to hold its breath. "Helios?" he repeated. "The EMP satellite that killed your power was ours." No sound. Only the beep of Sophie's heart monitor. Claire lowered her head. "I didn't know it would cause this. But it's my fault. I signed off on the final safety clearance." Eli leaned back, eyes on the window, voice rough. "I once lost a teammate because of a bad report." He said the same thing. "I didn't know. But the issue isn't knowing or not. It's whether you'll take responsibility." Claire met his eyes, tears falling. "I am. I'll speak. Even if Helios buries me, I'll speak." He studied her for a long moment. Then, "You're flying too." That night, the national broadcast opened with the anchor's voice. "Helios Industries confirms that a malfunction in the Helios 9 satellite caused an electromagnetic disruption leading to the total power loss of SilverAir 982 Company. Representative and Chief Engineer Claire Duval publicly accepted responsibility this morning." The footage rolled. Claire standing before dozens of cameras, eyes shadowed but voice unwavering. "Sometimes progress makes us forget that technology should serve humanity, not replace its faith. I take full responsibility." Eli watched from the hospital room. Sophie slept beside him, TV light painting her face. He smiled faintly, whispering, "People can fall. But not everyone knows how to stand up like she does." The next morning, the world was louder than ever. They called it the miracle in the snow. But for Eli, the real miracle was simply hearing his daughter laugh again. Sophie woke, her voice soft as wind. "Daddy?" "I dreamed I was flying." Eli brushed her hair, smiling. "And what were you flying on this time?" "Not wings," she said. "A promise." He nodded, eyes stinging. "Then you understand." In the hospital hallway, Claire waited. She wore a simple gray sweater, a cup of hot coffee in her hand. "I thought you'd hate me," she said when he approached. Eli shrugged. "I used to hate the sky. But it still let me live. Maybe forgiveness is another kind of flying." She smiled, eyes glinting in the cold mountain sun. "Ever think maybe you didn't land in the wrong place?" Eli looked at her, then out the window, where Sophie played with the young nurses. "No," he said quietly. "I think I landed exactly where I was meant to." They stood there in silence, listening to the wind slide through the pines, soft, like a breath after a long flight. And somewhere, in crowded newsrooms across New York, people still spoke of Eli Navarro, the old mechanic who brought down a giant of steel with nothing but heart. But to him, it was always simpler. If anyone asks how I did it, I can only say this: I didn't land a plane. I just brought my daughter home. 3 weeks after the miraculous landing, Denver's sky was calm again. So clear you could see the Rockies mirrored in the glass of downtown towers. The news about the mechanic who flew on faith slipped off the front page, but its echo lingered in replayed clips in a sentence that kept circling the internet. I didn't land an airplane. I just brought my daughter home. The line became a symbol. It showed up on coffee mugs, on t-shirts, even painted on a SilverAir tail. But to Eli Navarro, symbol was only a shadow. He was still the man who rose early, shrugged into an old jacket, drove his daughter to cardiology, then returned to the little garage to work. His calloused hands knew engines, oil, and silence. He'd never been good under spotlights. Sophie was improving. A partial heart transplant was planned for next month. The doctor said her body was recovering, as if the heart itself knows how to fight. Whenever he heard that, Eli only smiled. She's flown through the storm, he'd say. Now she's just on a slow landing. But some nights, after Sophie slept, he sat at the window, listening to wind pass through the pines. He knew a part of him was still aloft, in that open, unmeasured space where he'd once defied gravity with nothing but a heartbeat. One early winter afternoon, a sleek black car stopped in front of the garage. The door opened. A woman stepped out, navy overcoat, tall, gaze both fierce and far away. Claire Duval. She stepped in, avoiding coils of wire and splattered oil, glancing around with a half-smile. I imagined you worked under more professional conditions. Eli didn't look up. Did you? I find the sky fits just right in here. Claire gave a small laugh. That sounds like philosophy from a man who saved the world. No one saves the world, Claire. I just don't want to watch it fall again. She was quiet a beat. I didn't come to say thank you. I figure you've heard enough of that. Then I'm guessing you came to say the harder thing. I did. She drew a breath. Helios wants you on board. We're restarting Horizon, emergency condition flight training. They want you as an advisor. Eli huffed a laugh. Helios? The company that almost killed me? Also the company that gave me my name back, she said steady. I won't push you. I just think the sky still owes you one more return. He braced his hands on the bench, met her eyes, cool, not angry. I've flown enough? No, Claire said softly. You only landed. Flying is different. That stopped him. For a moment, the wind at the door mixed with the city's distant hum, far away but warm. He pulled off a glove, wiped grease on his sleeve. I don't teach flying. I teach landing. That's exactly what they need. He looked at her, half smile, half sigh. You really don't know when to quit, do you? She lifted a shoulder. I almost killed 132 people by staying silent. Now I want to save a few by speaking. You should speak too, Eli. People keep looking up and still don't know why they can trust the sky. He didn't answer. But that night he didn't sleep. The next day a letter arrived at the garage. Seal on the flap. Department of the Air Force. Confidential. Inside, a single white page, black ink, a familiar signature. Commander Sarah Lynn. Eli, we're launching a civilian pilot retraining program in Colorado Springs. I need someone to teach, not just control, but feel. The way you did. Not everyone understands that flying means keeping your heart steady in the wind. Come, or at least don't say no. He folded the letter, slid it into his jacket. Said nothing. The next morning, Sophie spotted the suitcase pulled from the closet. Are you going somewhere, Dad? She asked from the bed, eyes bright. Just a few days, he said. I have to teach some people how not to be afraid of the sky. You'll come back, right? Before you can finish drawing your new airplane. She nodded, then tilted her head, impish. Did you pack the lucky teddy? Eli froze, then laughed. How did you know? I put it in last night. He ruffled her hair. So the junior pilot's still in charge of logistics. Colorado Springs. The training camp sat in a snow-ringed valley. Eli walked into the classroom in oil-smudged boots and a faded gray jacket. 12 young faces in front of him, men and women, trainee pilots watching him like a living legend. He tapped the board. All right. I hear you're good at theory. Good with tech. Before we talk about flying, answer me this. When the sky kills the lights and the engines go quiet, what do? A student raised his hand. Contact ATC, sir. No signal. Try a reboot. Batteries fried. Pray. He looked at the woman who'd said it and smiled. Closest answer yet. But don't pray to survive. Pray to be calm. Because when everything's gone, the only thing you still control is how you hold the yoke. The room settled. He went on. Flying isn't about altitude. It's about feel. You don't control the air. You talk to it. You listen to the tremor in the metal, the heartbeat of the engine, and sometimes your own. Another student asked, "Sir, what do you call this lesson?" Eli smiled. Lesson 1, the weight of wings. That afternoon, Sarah Lynn appeared in the training hall, arms folded, a smile mixing pride and relief. "You still have it, Navarro?" "No, just less rust." Sarah laughed. "You know, I still remember Kandahar. When the C-130 caught fire, you said, 'If we can't climb, we can slide.' I thought you were insane." "No, now you still do." "No, now I think insanity is another way to believe." They laughed the way survivors share memory. Then Sarah's face sobered. "Eli, Claire Duvall's under investigation. Helios wants her off the air. She needs someone to prove she's more than a system error." Eli said nothing. "You told me you didn't land alone, so don't let her fall alone." That evening, Eli drove to Denver. The city burned bright in his windshield like a scatter of fallen stars. He found the Helios Tower. Claire stood alone on the roof, coat wrapped tight, staring into the distance. Wind hard. She didn't turn at his steps. "I knew you'd come," she said, eyes on the rivers of light. "You always do." "No, this time I only hoped." He stood beside her. Together they looked at the city, the roads glowing like threads of gold. "They want me quiet, Eli. If I say more about Helios 9, they'll kill the Horizon program." "I don't know what to choose." He studied her. "If you're quiet, you save a company. If you speak, you might save an entire field." Claire turned, eyes wet. "And if I lose everything?" He exhaled. "Then you'll have me, downwind." She smiled, fragile but true. "You really don't know how to say the safe thing, do you?" Safe never made a beautiful flight path. The next morning, Claire stood before a federal hearing. Reporters packed the aisles. Lights flared. Her voice was clear. "If we build the sky out of metal and code, but forget that people are what keep it standing, then progress is meaningless." I'm not speaking to defend myself. I'm speaking so that people like Eli Navarro won't have to save us a second time. Silence swept the hall. In the back row, Eli sat quietly, a brief smile like a small confession. That night he returned to the garage. Sophie was asleep. On the table lay a small envelope, her messy handwriting. "Daddy, I made you a medal." Inside was a circle of cut paper taped together. A drawing of wings and the crooked words, "For flying with your heart." Eli sat, the paper glowing under the weak yellow lamp. He smiled, murmuring, "The weight of wings really is light when you know who you're flying for." That night, the Denver sky was unnaturally clear. No moon, no wind, only the soft light of the city reflecting off low clouds, as if the whole world were holding its breath. Eli stood on the balcony of his small apartment, a cup of cold coffee in hand. Below, traffic flowed like a ribbon of stars. Somewhere, among millions of sleeping souls, a little girl with a fragile heart lay in a hospital bed, waiting for her new wings. Sophie's surgery would be at sunrise. A rare, complicated procedure, but with hope. Eli had waited 7 years for this day, 7 years of debt, despair, and long nights spent watching her breathe, begging heaven to keep her heart beating one more minute. He had lost everything, home, job, honor, but never his faith in that child. She was the reason he still breathed, the reason he dared to take the sky once more. His phone buzzed. A message from an unsaved number, Claire Duvall. "I heard about the surgery. Tomorrow I'll be there. Under the same sky, we owe her that." Eli stared at the words for a long time. Then, without replying, he closed the phone and smiled faintly. Morning. The hospital corridor glowed under sunlight, the smell of antiseptic mixing with early coffee. Sophie lay on a rolling bed, eyes wide open, trying to look brave. "Are you scared?" Eli asked, leaning close. She shook her head. "No, I'm just scared." "You'll cry." He laughed, though his voice trembled. "Pilots who cry get grounded." "Then I'll cry for you." He squeezed her hand, pressing it to his cheek. "No need, just fly steady, that's all." The surgery doors shut. A single click, short but heavy. Eli sank into a waiting chair, hands clasped tight. He had landed a plane with dead engines before, but this time he had no yoke, no radar, no Sarah Lynn in his ear. Only faith, fragile but real. Claire arrived an hour later. No makeup, no blazer, just a cream sweater, 2 cups of steaming coffee in hand. "One for you," she said softly. "And one for my nerves." Eli took it, warmth seeping into his fingers. "Thanks for coming. Thanks for letting me." They sat side by side, watching through the glass into the white room beyond. Neither spoke for minutes. Only the rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor filled the silence. Steady, like two hearts waiting for the same miracle. Inside, Sophie slept deeply, her heart connected to threads as fine as silver. She dreamed. In her dream, she sat on a giant paper airplane, soaring across a golden sky. Below lay meadows, ahead light, and her father's voice somewhere near. "Fly, little pilot. You know the way." She smiled, tilting her white wings, and the sky opened. Outside, Claire whispered, "Do you ever think what happened in Wyoming might have been fate?" Fate? Yes, if that plane hadn't fallen, I'd still be someone hiding from guilt, and you. Maybe you'd never believe the sky still had room for you. Eli stared out, watching sunlight shimmer on the glass. I used to think fate was an excuse people made when they couldn't face the truth. But now, maybe it's just how the universe arranges for us to meet the right person. Claire smiled softly. Sounds like your flight philosophy. No, just a lesson from a kid who taught me to believe in what I can't see. 3 hours later, the OR doors swung open. The surgeon pulled down his mask, smiling. The operation was successful. The heart's beating steady. Eli stood, his back stiff. You're serious? Completely. She's strong. It's like her heart knew it had to live. Claire burst into tears. Eli only nodded, eyes blurred. He didn't hug anyone. He just clasped his hands tight and stared through the glass. On the monitor, the pulse line blinked in calm rhythm, each beat like his daughter's laughter. That afternoon, Sophie awoke. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, falling on her face. "Dad? I'm here." I can hear my heart pounding in my ears. That's because it's happy. Do you hear it too? Eli smiled, pressing his palm to her chest. I do. It sounds like the wind when a plane lands. She closed her eyes. I want to fly again. Someday you'll fly farther than me. No, I want to fly with you. He kissed her forehead. Deal. Claire stood outside the door, watching silently. In the dim light, the sight of father and daughter softened something inside her. Not pity, but the kind of emotion she hadn't dared believe in for a long time. A week later, when Sophie had recovered, the hospital hosted a small press session. No stage lights, no wall of microphones, just a modest room, a few reporters, and one true story. Eli stood at the front, no notes, and spoke simply. We fell, and we lived. I have no heroic story. I only know, when you're afraid, think of someone you can't afford to lose. That's how you find a way to fly even without wings. The room fell silent. A woman reporter asked, Do you think you'll ever fly again? Eli glanced toward the doorway, where Sophie sat with Claire, laughing, radiant. I never stopped flying, he said. I just finally know who I'm flying for. That night, Claire drove them home. After Sophie fell asleep, she pulled over, windows down, a cool wind drifting through. You know, she said softly, I used to be afraid to look at the sky. It reminded me of my mistakes. But now, every time I see the stars, I think of you, and how even in the darkest night, someone still chooses to hold the controls. Eli looked at her, the streetlights glinting in his eyes. And every time I hear an engine start, he said, I think of you, the one who spoke when silence was safer. The space between them stilled. No confession, no music, just understanding. Two people once broken, now sitting side by side under the same sky, needing no promises, only presence. Days later, Eli received an official letter from the U.S. Air Force. They wanted him as a special advisor for a new civil flight safety program. Its name, Wings of Trust. He finished reading and smiled. Below the signature, Sophie had added a line in pencil. Daddy, take me with you. I'm your co-pilot. He set the letter on the table beside her paper medal from before. Outside, the night breeze lifted the curtain, fluttering like wings. A message pinged on his phone. Claire, Horizon's first test flight next week. Right seat's empty. Want to sit where you used to, Captain? Eli looked at the screen, heart quickening. He typed back slowly. Not sure I still remember how to take off. Her reply came almost instantly. Then let me remind you. We just have to face the wind. He smiled, looking up at the sky through the window. Denver sparkled that night, and under the same sky, two souls who once fell finally began to learn how to fly together. That morning, the Colorado sky was so blue it seemed everything had stopped moving. Far in the distance, the snow-capped Rockies reflected sunlight, slicing through the thin, silk-like air. On the runway of the Helios Horizon Testing Center, a brand-new silver aircraft stood motionless, its body gleaming, wings stretched like arms waiting to open. Under the sun, the logo Horizon 9 shone on the ground, a circle enclosing a pair of broken wings. Welded back together, Claire Duval stood before the plane, dressed in a black flight suit, eyes steady yet fathomless. 6 months ago, she had been the center of an investigation. Today, she stood here, not to defend herself, but to prove something. A low voice came from behind. "Beautiful, but don't let the looks fool you." Claire turned. Eli Navarro walked toward her, flight jacket gray as ash, hair tossed by the wind, posture calm yet grounded. He stopped a few steps away, gazing at the plane like something both familiar and feared. "The last time I saw one of these," he said, "it was falling." Claire smiled faintly. "Then this time, help it fly." Eli was silent, eyes locked on hers. "You sure about this?" "No," she said, "but that's why I need you." In the control room, Sarah Lynn sat before a wall of monitors, headset slightly tilted. She had flown beside Eli through war, through flights where every choice meant the line between life and wreckage. Now, watching him sit in a cockpit again, a chill crawled down her spine, fear and pride entwined. "Navarro," Sarah's voice came through the comm, steady but taut. "You may begin engine check." Eli inhaled deeply, fingers gliding across the console. The engines purred to life, a soft, decisive hum. The sound made him shiver. It had been too long since he'd heard the rhythm of metal and wind, the song that once defined his life. Claire, in the right seat, flipped auxiliary switches, voice even though her heart pounded. "Fuel stable, pressure green, engine 2 active." Sarah monitored the data, speaking into the mic. "Helios Horizon, flight code 0x1, cleared for takeoff." Eli wrapped his hand around the control lever. "Still can't believe I'm doing this again." Claire tilted her head, eyes glinting. "Believe it, Navarro." "We're writing the next chapter of the sky." The aircraft began to roll. The engines roared higher. Wind lashed against the wings. Outside, young engineers looked up, eyes alight. Sarah glanced at the clock, counting down. 3, 2, 1. The shriek of speed tore across the runway. Horizon 9 lifted from the ground, nose tilting skyward, sunlight flashing across its silver body like fire. "We're flying," Eli said, voice low. "Exactly," Claire replied, smiling. And this time, together. They fell silent for a few minutes. Outside, the sky stretched endlessly, streaked with white rivers of cloud. Claire looked at him. "How does it feel?" "Like going home, but not sure there's still room for me there." "You know," she said softly, "Horizon isn't just a project. It's redemption. For me, for Helios, for everyone who once let the sky break apart." He glanced at her, eyes softening. "You don't need steel and circuits to redeem yourself." "No, but I need to prove that technology still has a soul, as long as it's flown by humans." They climbed higher. The altimeter surged, 20,000, 25,000, 30,000 feet. All systems stable. Sarah's voice came through. "Data steady. Maintain current speed. Prepare to engage autopilot." Claire nodded, flipped the switch. A soft beep. Autopilot engaged. For a few seconds, everything was perfect. Then abruptly, the screens flickered. A red warning flashed. Signal interference detected. Sarah shouted through the headset, "Claire, what's happening?" Claire leaned over the console. "No way. Not another Helios link glitch." Eli's tone dropped. "Disengage autopilot, now. Trying." But nothing responded. The warning lights blazed crimson. The plane jolted violently. Claire screamed, "It's locking navigation." Eli slammed his fist on the console, growling, "It doesn't get to decide my flight path." He grabbed the lever, switching to manual override. A burst of static, then silence. The sky went still again. They both panted, sweat beading at their temples. "What did you do?" Claire gasped. "Cut the power," Eli said steady, and pulled Faith back online. Sarah's voice crackled, shaky but alive. "Holy hell, are you two okay?" "We're fine," Eli answered. "Just..." Horizon taught me an old lesson. Never hand your heart to a processor. Claire leaned back, trembling. No one's going to believe us. Another interference after Wyoming? They'll destroy me. Eli turned to her, voice unwavering. Then let me speak for you. That afternoon, Helios headquarters erupted. Leaks everywhere. Horizon test malfunction. Autopilot lost control for 37 seconds. Investors panicked. Reporters flooded in. Claire was summoned to an emergency board meeting. Eli waited outside, silent. The door opened. The CEO's voice carried out, Ms. Duvall, Helios can't afford more risk. You were the face of a disaster once. We need someone else to speak publicly. Claire replied quietly. If I don't speak, who tells the truth? We don't need truth. We need shareholder confidence. The door slammed. Eli had heard enough. He walked in without knocking. If they don't want truth, he said, then I'll say it. The CEO spun around. And who exactly are you to interfere with Helios's internal affairs? The man who fell 32,000 feet, Eli said evenly, and still chose to believe in an engineer named Claire Duvall. The room froze. Claire looked at him, eyes wet but shining. That evening's press conference overflowed with cameras. Eli stood before the microphones, flight jacket gray, no script in hand. Someone asked me why I'd trust Helios again, he began, after they nearly killed me. I only have one answer. Because I trust the person who had the courage to admit she was wrong. He glanced toward the back row, where Claire stood, half hidden in the crowd. Today, when the system failed again, she didn't run. She fought to take back control, just like I did on SilverAir 982. And if the sky has a soul, it's people like her who keep it alive. Silence spread. Then the applause began, soft at first, then rising, swelling like a wave. Claire bowed her head, tears glimmering, a smile breaking through, light as air. That night, Eli sat on the Helios rooftop, city lights glittering below, airport beacons blinking in the distance. Claire walked up, 2 cans of soda in hand. We did it, she said. No, he replied. You did. No, she smiled. We did. They sat together in the wind, the air tinged with smoke and metal, familiar, comforting. You know, Claire said softly, when the system failed today, I thought we were going down again. But this time, I wasn't afraid. Why not? Because I knew you'd hold the controls. Eli turned to her, gaze deep. And if I let go, then I'd take over. A quiet moment. He smiled, tired, genuine. You're reckless. And you're worth the risk. Somewhere in the dark, Sarah Lynn watched the radar screen and exhaled a small smile. She whispered to herself, 2 people who once feared the sky, finally taught it to love humanity. Rain had been threatening since dawn. Over the Helios Tower on the outskirts of Seattle, black clouds coiled like spilled ink. No one inside knew the storm rolling in wasn't just from the sky. It came from keyboards, clickbait headlines, and a 39-second clip. The video spread like wildfire, Horizon 9 shaking violently, Claire Duvall shouting, "It's locking navigation." Then a black screen. No context, no data, only fear, cut and stitched with precision. Within hours, Ars Helios crash simulation trended at the top. Financial papers blared. New Horizon failure. Lead engineer suspected of hiding system flaws. In the emergency war room, lights blazed. The air felt heavy. The table was buried in printouts and toxic comments. The Helios CEO slammed his palm down. You promised me the system was safe. Claire stood straight, eyes red from no sleep. The clip is edited. You know that. We have the raw data. No one cares about data, he barked. They care about who takes the fall. Silence. In that instant, Claire understood. Even if she had saved that aircraft, they were still ready to throw her to the wolves. Eli walked into the meeting, jacket wet with rain, voice low. If you need someone to blame, blame me. The CEO scowled. You don't work for Helios. I work for the people who still believe in your sky, Eli replied. Claire turned toward him, gratitude and fear crossing in her eyes. He was stepping into the fire she was meant to face alone. That afternoon, the press swarmed Helios's gates. Reporters shoved forward, microphones spearing the air, questions firing like bullets. Ms. Duvall, is your system dangerous? Mr. Navarro, are you covering for Helios? Eli took Claire's hand and led her through the crowd. Ignore them, he said. This isn't the time to explain. It's the time to prove. How? With the sky itself, he brought her to the old test airfield, where Horizon 9 still lay sleeping under a tarp. Drizzle thickened. Claire stared at the aircraft, throat tight. What are you planning? Fly again. Open the data to the whole world. Let truth stand in daylight. Eli, you once said the sky has a soul, he cut in. Then let it speak today. The rain intensified. News alerts flashed. Eli Navarro and Claire Duval set to refly Horizon 9 without Helios approval. In the backup control room, Sarah Lynn's headset buzzed non-stop. Eli, have you lost your mind? No clearance, no full crew. I have a reason, he said. What reason? A 6-year-old once asked me why grown-ups fear flying. I need to show her we only fall when we stop believing. Sarah paused. Then softly, I'm opening a private frequency. If you're going to be stupid, I'm still watching your radar. The aircraft spun up. Engines thundered against the empty hangars. Claire strapped into the right seat, shivering from cold and fear. Are you sure about this? No, Eli said with a crooked grin. That's the good sign. They lifted into rain. Drops hammered the windshield like clear bullets. Horizon 9 left the ground and dove into a whirl of black cloud, the mouth of a storm. In the control room, Sarah bit her lip. Navarro, pressure signal dropping. Repeat, dropping. Copy, he said. Hold heading. Don't let the storm choose our route. Claire tracked the instruments, blue light flickering across her skin. Wind at 70 knots. Eli, if we hold this altitude, we'll punch through. An electrical crack. The cabin flashed. Displays flickered. Autopilot malfunction. Claire screamed, No way! It's the same interference. Eli slammed the console. It's hacked. Hacked? Yes. Someone doesn't want us proving the truth. He rolled the yoke. The aircraft lurched hard. Below, live cameras streamed Horizon 9 spinning in the storm. People held their breath. Sarah shouted on the radio, Eli, get out of there, that's an order. No, he growled. I won't let anyone rewrite our history. Claire braced, reaching. Her hand touched his on the controls. You don't have to prove anything, Eli. You're wrong, he said. I'm proving it isn't your fault. He killed all automation, switched to full manual. The cabin shuddered violently. One wing trailed smoke. The radar was a blizzard of static, but somewhere within the noise, a track line held. Thin, trembling, but there. What are you doing? Claire shouted. Climbing into the teeth, he said. So every camera out there sees Helios won't die in silence. Outside, rain needled the glass. Thunder rolled like drums. On the ground, thousands watched the live stream. In a cafe, a child paused her spoon over hot milk. In a dorm room, aerospace students stopped breathing. And in a distant hospital, a little girl with nasal cannula whispered, Daddy, look, he's flying. Sarah's voice shook. Eli, any farther and your pressure will blow. It won't, he rasped, grinning. I've flown worse nights over Kandahar. Claire looked at him, tears spilling. You don't need to save me. You're mistaken, he said. I'm saving faith. The aircraft punched through the storm crown. Blinding light flooded the cockpit. The sky above opened, clear, serene, as if the world had paused. Below them, the cyclone churned, ferocious, now receding. Claire burst into tears, hands trembling. We did it. Eli eased off the yoke, smiling. No, you did. I just kept the balance. Sarah's voice cracked over the radio. Radar confirms. They're out! The whole world is watching. They landed on rain-slick runway. Reporters surged again, but this time no shouting, only applause. Gentle, then swelling, Eli disembarked first, hands still shaking. Claire followed, hair wild, suit soaked, eyes blazing. She didn't make a statement. She just looked at him and whispered, clear enough for the microphones. You didn't fly for me. You flew with me. The broadcast carried that image everywhere. An engineer and a single father, standing in a wet airfield, Horizon 9 smoking behind them, yet unbroken. That night, Helios held another press conference. No empty seats, no anger, only silence. The CEO stood and spoke slowly. Today, Helios was saved not only by technology, but by two people who dared to believe the sky can forgive. Under the table, Claire took Eli's hand. No words, just a look. And within it, something that rose above the storm, something they both knew. The storm was only the prelude to dawn. 2 weeks after the storm cleared, America was still speaking the names Eli Navarro and Claire Duval. Every major newspaper carried the image of them standing before Horizon 9. the aircraft that didn't just defy a tempest, but rekindled humanity's faith in courage itself. CNN called it the skyward moment. The New York Times wrote, "Two forgotten souls who made the heavens look down." But behind the lights, silence lingered in every breath. Eli didn't like cameras. He still lived in his small Tacoma home, with a rusted porch and a photo of his daughter Sophie taped crookedly to the fridge. She was healing well after her heart surgery. The doctors called it a miracle, but Eli knew she was the reason he was still alive. One afternoon, Sophie sat by the window coloring with her crayons. "Dad," she asked, "they say you're a hero." "Is that true?" Eli froze mid-wipe, rag in hand. "A hero? No, sweetheart. I'm just someone who learned how to keep balance when the wind gets too strong." Sophie looked up, smiling. "Then I'll learn that too. So when the wind gets strong, I won't fall." He reached out, brushed her hair, feeling a lump rise in his throat. "As long as you still believe in the sky, you're already standing tall." Across the country, Claire sat in the newly renovated Helios conference room. No more cold glass walls, only warm wood and light. Before her lay an envelope embossed with the U.S. seal. "Official invitation? National Civil Aerospace Initiative. We are honored to invite Chief Engineer Claire Duval and pilot Eli Navarro to join the Federal Research Partnership developing emergency flight systems without engine dependence." Claire read the line, then looked up with a half smile, half sigh. "So, the government wants us to teach them how to fly on faith?" Sarah Lynn, sitting nearby, chuckled softly. "No, on instinct. But maybe you two are proof that instinct has its own kind of morality." Claire exhaled. "I'm not sure Eli will agree. He's had enough of the sky. And you?" Sarah's eyes glimmered. "What about you?" Claire said nothing. In her head, she could still hear the storm, the wind howling, his voice calling her name through static. Moments that reminded her what she had really been searching for. Not redemption, not fame, but someone who saw her through the chaos, and still chose to believe. The next morning, she showed up at Eli's garage. He was bent over an old motorcycle, oil staining his gray shirt. Hair a mess, exactly as he'd been the first day she met him, unpolished, quiet, and carrying the weight of entire worlds. "You came unannounced," he said, without looking up. "If I'd called ahead, you'd hide." True. She stepped closer, placed an envelope on the hood of the bike. "Letter from Washington. They want us to teach for the National Aviation Rescue Program." Eli wiped his hands, met her eyes. "They want to turn our story into a curriculum?" "No, into the future." He chuckled, shaking his head. "I don't belong behind a lectern." No one said lectern. "They want us to train pilots, people learning how to stay calm when the sky goes silent." He paused, gaze distant. "You know what scares me most?" "What?" "Not falling, landing, and not knowing where to go next." Claire looked at him for a long time. "Then let me chart the course this time." They arrived in Washington, D.C. at the end of April. The observation wing of the National Aerospace Center gleamed like a mirror reflecting clouds. Press filled every corner, but this time Eli didn't shy from the lenses. He stepped onto the podium, wearing his worn pilot jacket, voice steady. "The day I fell from the sky, I thought I'd lost everything. My crew, my faith, myself. But it turns out, only when you touch the ground do you learn what flying really means." He turned toward Claire. "And her, the engineer the world once called a system error. She made me believe that humanity is still the strongest software." The hall rose to its feet. Applause thundered. Claire bowed her head, hiding tears. That night they sat on the marble steps outside headquarters, paper cups of coffee in hand. The wind carried the scent of fresh grass and the distant hum of takeoffs. "Do you ever think," Claire murmured, "the sky never wanted to kill us?" "Maybe it just wanted to see if we had the courage to return." Eli smiled. "If that's true, then I think it got its answer." She looked at him, eyes soft. "Eli, how are you always calm, even when the world falls apart?" He sipped his coffee, voice low. "Calm doesn't mean I'm not scared. It means I've already lost everything once, and I learned fear saves no one." She nodded, smiling faintly. "You know, when I first met you, I thought you were just some scruffy guy in seat 17. And now? Now I know you're the reason the sky's still blue. He laughed quietly. That sounds like a terrible movie line. Well, who said our lives weren't one? A month later, the Skyward Initiative launched. On the screen behind the unveiling ceremony, a new logo appeared, two crossing flight paths forming the shape of wings. Below it, a line read, "Because some flights begin on the ground." Eli trained the first class, veterans, engineers, mechanics, people who had once given up on flying. He taught them not just to control an aircraft, but to control themselves. Flying isn't about avoiding the wind, he said. It's about learning to listen to it. Claire stood at the back of the hangar, watching him. In that moment, she realized, sometimes you don't need to return to the sky to reach it. Late that night, when the center was empty, she found him alone in the hangar. Horizon 9 rested under a soft layer of dust. Eli stood silently, staring at it. You still come here? Yeah, it's a reminder that what makes us fly isn't the engine. It's the people we'd be willing to fall for. She stepped closer, tracing the silver stripe on the fuselage. When will you fly again? Don't know, he said, eyes on the night sky beyond the hangar door. Maybe someday, when I stop being afraid of losing what's on the ground, she whispered. Then I'll wait for that day. He turned, looking at her, longer than necessary. Aren't you afraid? Of course, she murmured. But some flights are worth the fear. The next morning, Sophie visited the center. She ran down the runway, hands outstretched, chasing the wind, laughing freely. Claire watched and saw Eli in the distance, his eyes brighter than ever. See? He said. She's flying. Without wings, Claire replied. Must be hereditary. They both laughed. The sound echoed across the open airfield, blending with the distant roar of engines as Horizon 9 was prepped for another test flight. But this time no one was afraid. That evening, as the sun sank, Claire and Eli sat by the control tower, watching the last streaks of light fade away. You know, she said softly. They say every time a plane takes off, gravity loses. Eli smiled. No, it's when humanity wins against itself. They sat quietly. Far above, the sky turned a deep velvet blue, and in that glow hung a promise, unspoken yet certain, that they would keep flying, not to escape the past, but to reach something greater than the sky itself. Morning in Seattle was wrapped in mist. Soft sunlight filtered through the glass walls of the Skyward Training Center, falling across Eli Navarro's hands resting on the desk. Before him lay a flight order, the bold print reading, Test Flight, Skyward 01, Pilot in Command, Eli Navarro. A few meters away, Sophie sat on a bench, legs swinging, clutching her old teddy bear. She was stronger now, rosier cheeks, brighter eyes, but a faint worry lingered in her gaze. Dad, are you really going to fly? She asked softly. Eli smiled, gentle as the wind. Yeah, but this time's different. I'm not flying to escape. I'm flying to come home. Claire entered, white jacket, hair tied high. Her eyes held both pride and unease. They still don't trust the system's stability, she said. If anything goes wrong, you eject immediately. You know I've never been good at ejecting, he teased, his voice laced with warmth. Eli, she said sharply. I mean it. He turned, took her hand. I know. But this time I'm not alone in that cockpit. You're with me. Sophie's with me. And so are all the people who still believe the sky belongs to us. Claire looked at him, eyes glistening. You sound like you're not coming back. He smiled faintly. On the contrary, I'm just learning how to land where I truly belong. By noon, television cameras surrounded runway 4. The newly upgraded Horizon 9, now renamed Skyward 1, gleamed beneath the sun. Its logo, a pair of shining metal wings, and between them, a barely visible inscription, for those who still believe. In the control tower, Sarah Lynn checked her watch, then spoke into her headset. Skyward 1, runway's clear. Whenever you're ready, Eli's calm voice came through. Ready, give me the wind. 14 knots southeast. Perfect. Enough to lift us. Outside the fence, Claire stood with Sophie gripping her hand. The first breeze of the season swept through their hair, and in that moment, Claire understood. Some people are born to walk the earth. Others are born to teach the world to believe in flight. 42 p.m. The engines roared to life, not loud but deep, warm, like a heartbeat. The aircraft accelerated, lifted from the runway. Sunlight flashed across its silver body as it rose into the blue. In the cockpit, Eli guided it smoothly, every motion like writing poetry in air. Altitude 10,000 feet, stable. Sarah's voice, radar's clean. The whole country's watching, Navarro. Let's hope they're not expecting acrobatics. Just land it. Eli, for once in my life, he said with a grin. That's all I want too. Between 12:59 p.m. Suddenly, the warning light blinked red. A long, piercing beep. Below, Claire saw the signal shift on the monitor. Her heart clenched. No, it can't be, Sarah shouted through the comm. Eli! Left wing hydraulic pressure drop. He kept his voice steady. Copy. Switching to manual balance. You won't hold long. Just long enough to land. Wind picked up harder now. Skyward One tilted, then steadied. Eli inhaled deeply, glancing out the window. The sky blurred like breath on glass. But below, through the clouds, he could see the runway. A thin line of light. Fragile as a thread leading home. 1:07 p.m. Sarah's tone turned urgent. 3 minutes to touchdown. Wind's shifting. 8 degrees cross. Noted. Eli. Claire's voice broke in on the private channel. Can you hear me? Better than ever. Don't push beyond the limit. He smiled. You forget love doesn't have limits? He pulled the yoke. Wind screamed. The aircraft shuddered violently. In the control room, everyone held their breath. Sophie buried her face in Claire's chest, crying. Ms. Claire. Daddy's going to land, right? Claire squeezed the girl's hand tightly. Your dad landed when the world gave up. Right now. He's just doing what he was born to do. PM. The plane touched down, softly, perfectly, impossibly. Dust billowed, then settled. The wheels screeched, rolled, and stopped. Sarah shot to her feet. Touchdown confirmed. Skyward One is safe. Cheers erupted in the tower. On the viewing deck, Claire broke down, hugging Sophie tight. The cockpit door opened. Eli stepped out, hair tousled, shirt damp with sweat, eyes bright as fire. He looked around, said nothing, then knelt and scooped a handful of earth from the runway. Sometimes, he whispered, to remember where you belong, you have to touch the ground again. Claire ran to him. No words, just an embrace, fierce, breathless, real. He smiled, murmuring into her ear. This time, I landed in the right place. That evening, the media called it the gentle landing. No thunder, no spectacle, just the image of a man kneeling, holding a handful of soil, smiling at the daughter waving from afar. Sarah gave a short statement. Today, a man didn't just land a plane. He landed all of our faith back on solid ground. 1 year later, behind the Skyward Center, a small wooden house stood on a grassy field. A sign on the porch read, Wings House. Children ran around, learning to build little gliders. On the porch, Claire watered the flowers while Eli helped Sophie adjust her kite string. Think it'll fly in this wind? She asked. It will, Eli said, as long as you believe it will. Like you do? He chuckled. No, like your mom. Claire approached with a mug of coffee, squinting playfully. I heard that. Good, he winked. I wanted you to. Night fell. The three of them sat on the porch, watching stars flicker awake. Wind brushed softly through the trees. Sophie drifted to sleep between them. Claire leaned her head on his shoulder. Do you remember? She whispered. The first time I met you? Seat 17B, he said. And the sky was falling. And now? Now the sky has landed. They stayed silent. Because sometimes promises live not in words, but in the way two people sit together, listening to wind and the quiet rhythm of peace. The next morning, Eli stood by the doorway, gazing out. The sky was clear, the clouds drifting like silk ribbons. He whispered to no one, Thank you for letting me fly again. On the wooden table nearby sat a framed letter from the Department of Aviation to pilot Eli Navarro, who proved that sometimes miracles aren't in the wings but in the heart that dares to fly. He looked at it, smiled, then turned toward the two people he loved most. Breakfast time, he said. And today we don't need to take off to feel like we're flying. The final shot lingered on Sophie's little kite, circling above the cabin, its reflection dancing on the still lake below. The wind was gentle. The sky was quiet, and somewhere we heard a whisper. Fly again. If you've stayed with this story until now, then perhaps your heart has flown with them too. This isn't just a story about the sky. It's about people who were once afraid to fall, but still dared to open their wings one more time. Eli Navarro, the single father from seat 17, who thought his life would always circle between odd jobs and the fear of losing his child. Claire Duval, the engineer the world once called a system error. Two seemingly ordinary people who crossed paths at the very moment the sky broke in half, and somehow they mended it. Not with metal, but with faith. They taught us that. No fall is ever meaningless. No failure is beyond becoming flight. And sometimes, a safe landing isn't an ending, but the beginning of a new journey, where we find ourselves in peace. If this story has touched you, if it reminded you that strength doesn't live in the noise, but in quiet persistence, tell me, where are you listening from? From a faraway city, a small room, or maybe a flight drifting through the night? Leave your country, your city, or simply a hello in the comments below. Because every person who shares, every story retold, is another pair of wings unfolding. And if you want to hear more journeys like this, flights of kindness, of redemption, of hearts that once thought they'd stopped beating but somehow found their rhythm again, hit subscribe. Tap the little bell so we can take off together each time the world forgets how to look up. Thank you, from the bottom of my heart, for staying until the very last moment. Wherever you are on your own journey, I hope you remember, even in free fall we can still find our wings. And sometimes, the greatest miracle isn't flying high, but learning how to land softly beside the ones who make you want to stay. See you in the next story. Until then, keep your wings open and never stop believing in the sky.